Tami Frank oversees Partnership for a Healthy Lincoln's financial operations and grant management. Tami attended the University of Nebraska-Lincoln, earning a Bachelor of Science in Business Administration with an emphasis in accounting. Tami is also a certified lactation counselor, coordinating Partnership for a Healthy Lincoln's breastfeeding initiatives and serving as project director for the Lincoln Community Breastfeeding Initiative. Tami's experience includes working for Nebraska Medical Association, where she also served on the Childhood Obesity Prevention Project and the Public Health Committee-focused Child Health Policy. Tami and her husband, Kevin, have 3 children.
Well, welcome everyone. My name is Margaret Milligan. I work for Buy Fresh, Buy Local Nebraska, and we're a local food promotion and education program in the Agricultural Economics Department of UNL, and we're a big supporter of Farm-to-School in Nebraska. So we're really excited to be here introducing this session. This session is all about Harvest of the Month, and it is as a school and early childhood education gateway into local foods. And just a few things before we start in with the content. We are going to be recording all these sessions, and they will be available to registrants after the conference is over. And just make sure you're muted throughout the presentation. You are welcome to type in any comments or questions you have in the chat box. And then during the question and answer session, we will try to get to those. And yeah, just very, very happy to introduce our panelists, and very thankful for you all for being here today. So this session is going to focus on how the Harvest of the Month local sourcing program can assist both producers and schools in getting started with Farm to School. And our speakers and our panelists will be the following people. Thank you all for being here and contributing your time to talk about this. So Tami Frank is the Vice President of Operations and a Project Director for the Partnership for a Healthy Lincoln. And we are also joined by Anna Kohanetz, and she is also with the Partnership for a Healthy Lincoln. And she is their wellness programs manager, working to improve fitness and nutrition of Lincoln school children. We have Gary Fair of Green School Farms with us. Green School Farms is a sustainable vegetable and herb farm near Lincoln, and they are committed to increasing the health of our communities and our environment through conscious attention to sustainable and organic principles. Danya Behrens is a registered dietitian, extension educator, and project coordinator for the Nebraska Nutrition Education Program. And she works in the area of early childhood health as the Nebraska Extension Go Knapsack Coordinator. And we are joined also by Lisa Gideon, and she is a registered nurse at Loop Basin Public Health Department. Her roles are public health nurse and Well at Work program manager, which is a worksite wellness program. And she has also been in a contracted role as a school nurse in the Burwell Public Schools. And we're also joined by Kayla Hinrichs, and she is a food, nutrition, and health educator. And she is passionate about helping youth and adults make food choices and enhancing their culinary education. So we have a wealth of knowledge here with us. And with that, I will turn it over to Sarah Smith, who is the Farm to School specialist at the Nebraska Department of Education. So Sarah, take it away.
Thanks, Margaret. That was a long list of people there, which we're grateful for. That's how Farm to School works. So welcome everyone. I'm happy to be here. Like Margaret said, my name is Sarah. I'm the Farm to School specialist at the Nebraska Department of Education, and I have the privilege of working with many partners and stakeholders, including Margaret's Buy Fresh, Buy Local. So today, what we're going to be doing over the next hour is, and if you want to advance slides here, that'd be great. We're going to take the opportunity to just have some general updates about Farm to School. but really focusing in heavily on our Harvest of the Month program, which is moving towards expansion in many ways. So we'll be looking at that, and then we'll be hearing from on the ground folks that are using Harvest of the Month as a gateway into farm to school, either at the early childcare and education age of things, or within their school system, like a K-12 school system like Burwell's doing, and even in after school programming. So really seeing how diverse sectors can be influenced or impacted by Harvest of the Month in Nebraska. And then there's plenty of time we'll have for questions and answers. Please do use the chat box. We're anxious to engage the experts that are here that are doing this work and be hearing directly from them. So don't be shy, please do ask your questions. And we'll also be asking you to share some of your takeaways. What do you hear from this session that surprised you, or that inspires you, or makes you think, we've been really challenged. I don't know how we'll move forward with this, so what your challenges might be, but we'll look at that in just a little bit. So we're also curious what your specific role is as a member of likely Nebraska, or maybe you're from a different state, but I'm going to drop in the chat box here a link to something called a Mentimeter. So give it a shot if you're comfortable with it. Clicking on that link, and there will be a poll that comes up where you can choose your role that you associate with, whether you're a farmer, whether you are coming from a school district, maybe you associate most as a community member or a parent. So we'd love to see the different roles in that system there. Okay, and then here's some photos of the great people that will be presenting, and Margaret introduced them. So again, we have two different groups. One's going to be representing Lincoln with Partnership for a Healthy Lincoln, and the group that they have working together to promote Harvest of the Month, and then Burwell Public Schools. So these are the great people that are joining us in the call. Okay, next up here. So a quick just conversation about farm to school and the different elements that we kind of define farm to school with. So it's typically 3 different components. So we're looking at what's happening with experiential education. We're looking at what local foods are making it into school systems and early childcare facilities, and what's happening with school gardens and school greenhouses. So we know with farm to school that students are gaining access to more healthy and local foods and more education opportunities with these different elements. So cooking lessons and the culinary component, farm field trips, farmers market field trips. And so farm to school, we see it in communities that it's really empowering children, but also their families, so that they're learning to make more informed food choices and learning about what's available to them. And that's, of course, strengthening that local food economy and contributing to more vibrant communities. And so how do we actually do this nationally? How are we going to do this in our state? So this past year in 2021, we had the privilege of offering the first Nebraska Farm to School Institute. And so this was a project that was funded by USDA Farm to School grant funds. And then if you want to move that slide forward, the first year of this project was really focused on how the Department of Education as a state agency could partner with Nebraska Extension, which has a statewide reach and has a lot of expertise in the field of agriculture and education. And so we spent the first year of our project really expanding that capacity and looking at a community of practice with Extension and trying to learn what's already happening and how do we build upon that and help expand that in the state so that it can we can be learning from each other. And so in year 2 of the project, we offered the Farm to School Institute. And the goal of that is that we can really start to integrate farm to school by connecting what the Northeast Farm to School Institute out in Vermont coined the 3 C's, which is the classroom, the cafeteria, and the community. And so from there, we had an application process, and we were really looking for schools that had a sort of readiness to hop into a program, a project like this, especially during the time of COVID, and see some progress that they could make in farm to school. So a sense of readiness and awareness of what farm to school is, but also that they really had team buy-in and diversity. So on the next slide, we'll see kind of what this institute model looks like. Let's see. Can you go back a slide, Ben? The 3 C's. There we go. Okay, thanks. All right, so these were the 8 teams. These are the 8 teams actually that are currently participating in our Farm to School Institute. And so the model itself is that you're really looking at across the school teams. So different roles are involved. So some of our teams, every single team has a school administrator and the school food service director. And they also have an extension educator that are serving on their teams. In addition, we're seeing farmers, we're seeing school board members, we're seeing parents, we're seeing teachers and staff, FFA, family and consumer sciences. And what those teams are doing is they're working with a coach across the whole year to help facilitate and be an outside, give some outside input on what they know about the fields, to help provide that perspective, but also help the teams develop an action plan. So these teams are setting goals that are focused on that 3 C's model. So action goals that are attainable and smart for the classroom, the cafeteria, and the community, so that they can see they're taking small or maybe large steps forward in farm to school activity. Additionally, they can be engaging with the other teams. With COVID, we did have to transition to a virtual institute, but we're meeting quarterly, and we're hearing case studies and best practices and successes from our teams quarterly on those 3 C's, and eventually building capacity and just infusing this at the local level. So real farm to school activity is happening across the state. Okay, so on that next slide, you can just get a look at what those roles were. You can see the number of people that participated, and we can see here the diversity of roles that really help make a sustainable or integrated farm to school program. And then we also have, of course, been doing some evaluation as part of this. And you can see on that readiness piece that prior to the Institute, it's that light green. This was the readiness of those teams. And the dark green was before the Institute. The light green is after the Institute. And when I say Institute, it was a 1-week virtual session. Every day we had speakers and we had action planning time with coaches. And then they're continuing this work throughout the school year. So before June 23rd, we can just see that change, that they weren't as ready prior to the Institute, but with that professional development and with their facilitation of their coaches, and as they've been gathering together and using the resources of that program, they're more and more ready all the time. And so moving into that, Harvest of the Month is something that can be embedded into action plans of schools and teams, not just Institute teams, but schools and early care facilities, after school programs across the state. And this program was started in partnership with Buy Fresh, Buy Local Nebraska and the Nebraska Department of Education. And it was originally funded with specialty crop block grant program funding. And so we developed with Buy Fresh, Buy Local, these 9 products that could potentially be available across the state, but possibly underrepresented on school menus, including turnips and maybe leafy greens and asparagus. And so from there, we heard a cry for wanting to have apples and crunchable items that could then be offered during Farm to School Month, and in partnership with our crunch off that we do across the state, a different program, but something that would help them feature this Harvest of the Month item with promotional materials, with recipes, with newsletters that engage parents. These different materials that are part of Harvest of the Month can then cross-sector into other programs as well. And so there is a toolkit associated with Harvest of the Month that helps with outreach, it helps with programming, it helps with identifying products. And so from this, we are now currently moving forward with expanding this project. It's been offered primarily to K through 12, but we now have new funding to modify this for an early care age group. And so we're also working on a team nutrition project that it's called the Local and Indigenous Foods Training, where we'll be developing standardized recipes that are featuring local foods. And all of these local items will be incorporated into our current Harvest of the Month program. And so these featured foods include apples, aronia berries, beef, bison, dry beans, rhubarb, and turnip. And so the Nebraska Department of Education is partnering with the School Food Service Director of Gretna Public Schools, Chef Sharon Schaefer. We're also working with the Center for Rural Affairs and Nebraska Extension to recruit and be training up to 20 schools in our next school year, 22 and 23. And we'll be testing these new standardized recipes that have been developed and be branded and Nebraska-fied. And so with this, not only are these recipes going to be standardized and developed and food service staff at schools trained, But a big piece of this is engaging the students in taste testing the recipes once they're offered and providing their input and feedback. And so the students will be engaged in the recipe development process and choosing what will be menued and how. And so from there will also be an opportunity to be educating staff and students and families on these featured local foods. And so this is just a really good opportunity for us to expand on that Harvest of the Month program. So these recipes that will be served by these child nutrition programs, they do have to be standardized to help with recipe consistency and to make sure that we're meeting child nutritional requirements as part of the programs. It really helps with planning the menus and estimating for participation and quantity. It helps with estimating the labor and the food costs involved and also minimizing waste. So that's why we see standardized recipes as being really important in the school meals programs. And so there will be benefits, of course, for the schools that participate. They'll receive training, and for school food service, that means they'll have continued education credits, and they will have an opportunity to really promote their school meals program and to menu new items. They'll be able to maximize resources and find ways to make substitutions for products, especially now we're seeing supply chain shortages. They'll be able to have some flexibility with how they're menuing items and offering it out to the students. They'll also have coaching that they're going to be receiving with some of our partners, including Extension and the Center for Rural Affairs. And they can incorporate some of this into existing policy requirements and assessments that they need to do. They'll be featured in a Nebraska Grown School Cookbook, and they'll have support and technical assistance as we help to connect the schools to area producers. So we're hoping to put a matchmaking event together, like a market meetup that we offered earlier this year, and just really help to make that connection happen between the schools and the producers. They'll also receive some mini grants to help cover their need for food for the project, their supplies, and any enrichment activities that they would be interested in, like if there's a farmer that would come and present as part of that. So on the next slide, we'll see some of the recipes that are already in development and coming to a school hopefully near you. And you'll be surprised what kind of acceptance a lot of our Harvest of the Month schools find with something like roasted turnips. So I'm excited we get to have a new and improved recipe that will come from Nebraska for so many of these items. And branching out beyond the specialty crops, we'll have these new, the bison and the beef included too. So more recipes to come. We'll have up to 20 recipes at least that will be standardized and then tested out with our schools. And so the timeline for this, and let's see, let me add into the chat box here. We do, in order to make this producer connection, we are hoping for producers to express their interest and assess kind of their capacity for any of those items that I mentioned in the previous slide on a form. We have a form, I just dropped that in the chat box there. So we'd love to collect from producers your interest and availability and capacity to be providing any of these products. So this is just an initial survey to help us get started on collecting that information. And so as far as the timeline goes, you can see we're right now working on this recipe development and recruiting of the schools. And then the next school year, we'll be working with the schools to test the recipes and get it onto their menus. And then just a quick note here as we move forward that there are additional programs, of course, that we've been promoting in our state, like Nebraska Thursdays, which looks at the entire plate and bringing local into each of the meal components. So we'll be working this year to promote with a plant-based campaign, also funded through Specialty Crop Block Grant funds for Nebraska Thursdays, just really bringing this like schools rallying together around something that's branded and understood for them as a program that's important. So you can see the branding on the picture on the left is from Gearing Public Schools and Institute School. And on the right, that's Overton Public Schools, another Institute School. So these are schools that use these programs in order to have that gateway into farm to school activity. Ben, do you want to unmute yourself and tell us a little bit about this Market Maker platform?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Sarah. So Nebraska Market Maker is an online platform that's kind of serves the purpose of trying to help connect producers of all scales and all types with consumers on the other end. So it's a free platform. Businesses, producers can get on and create a profile for themselves and be featured on the website anytime anybody gets in there and searches for a particular product or type of producer. They'll show up in that list within the state of Nebraska. It is a national organization, but Nebraska Extension is overseeing the Nebraska market maker platform. And on the consumer side of things, it can be anywhere from an individual consumer up to schools, institutions, like Chef Khan, who did our keynote speech earlier this morning. Anyone at that kind of institutional level that might be sourcing some of these products that Sarah is talking about for the new recipes at schools can get on there and also search for producers selling those products in their area. There's transactional capability within the platform that makes it easy to kind of make a sale right there. If you have an existing sales platform, it can link from your profile right to your existing platform that you use for sales. I think probably the most important point is we're in the process now of building some strong partnerships to really kind of make this a more useful platform. So right now, Buy Fresh Buy Local Nebraska is in the process of their local food map being powered by Market Maker's database. So that will in the very near future be featured on their website. It'll look just the same as before, but it'll be kind of covered on the back end by the Market Maker database. Sarah and Department of Ed, we're working to kind of work with schools here in the near future, hopefully to get them to create profiles on Market Maker so that they can be putting out to producers the exact products and quantities that they're looking for in a more simple and digestible format. So I'll put the link in the chat here in a minute, but yeah, please feel free to reach out if anybody has questions about Market Maker.
Thanks, Ben. All right, so one more quick update here is we're really excited to be offering local producer trainings. They are called Bringing the Farm to School, and our first one that we'll be offering will be on March 3rd in Omaha at the Douglas R. B. County's Extension Office. Thanks to No More Empty Pots, there are stipends available and mileage reimbursement for those that are interested in that. Please do go to that registration link if you're interested in attending. We have, and you are a producer. That's key. There are limited spots available for this. We'll be social distancing and masks will be required as according to the Douglas County requirements right now. And the partners involved at the bottom there, you'll see these are the partners that are participating in planning the trainings and also implementing and finding our panelists and our experts and our speakers. So it's a very comprehensive training. It is a long day, but we're excited for the content that's involved and hoping that it is some good next steps for producers to understand how to get into these school markets. So a part of this project and the purpose for it was that we wanted to make sure that farmers that are under-resourced and coming from communities like BIPOC communities or tribal communities, we are making sure that we're offering these in communities that maybe are under-resourced and not had an opportunity to engage in production, like trainings of this nature. So we're excited for the opportunity to partner with across the state, be offering these. We'll be in the Panhandle and making sure that we have Spanish translation services out there. And we are working with the tribe right now. We don't have those details ironed out yet, but just really excited to have be able to offer this across the state with how diverse we are. And lastly, before we hop into hearing directly from our teams, I just wanted to make sure and note that, like was mentioned earlier, there was a policy put in place in 2021 that has expanded our capacity in the state for farm to school activity. And we know that when there is support at the policy level, when there's a position put in place, either at a university level or state agency level, and when there's programs like Nebraska Thursdays and Harvest of the Month that exist, then there's, of course, a lot more availability for farm to school activity to be happening. And so this last year, a lot of these programs have been able to happen, partially because there has been an opportunity for the Department of Education to have a coordinated position to be working with partners and pulling these pieces together. So that did happen. It is underway. There is a position. I sit in that position actually, but that was a big change in our state to actually have a farm to school policy. So that happened and things are currently underway. If you have questions, never hesitate to reach out. Okay, Ben, I will pass off to you to start moving us into our presentations.
Okay, thanks, Sarah. Appreciate it. So we're going to start here with The Lincoln Group, the Partnership for a Healthy Lincoln, Green School Farms, and Nebraska Extension are partnering on a really exciting project reaching early child care centers. So I'm going to turn it over to Tami Frank to get us started. Or whoever wants to start from that.
That's okay. I'm going to let Anna start us off with the after school piece.
There you go.
Thank you, Ben. Could I have the next slide, please? Perfect, thank you. Hello, everyone. My name is Anna Kohanet, and I am the Wellness Programs Manager for Partnership for a Healthy Lincoln. Partnership for a Healthy Lincoln was one of the organizations that piloted Nebraska Department of Education Harvest of the Month materials at 2 pilot sites. And afterwards, we began introducing Harvest of the Month to community learning centers, specifically after school programs. My role within our organization is to implement wellness curriculums in after-school settings that teach kiddos healthy cooking skills, physical activity skills, and gardening skills. We currently lead wellness clubs in 7 local Title I schools, and we incorporate Harvest of the Month into our wellness clubs. So Harvest of the Month is definitely my favorite curriculum because it evokes a sense of respect and pride for local produce grown by our own farmers in Nebraska. And it encourages healthy eating by letting children try a sample of produce, and then they get to vote if they liked it or didn't like it. In the next slide, I'd like to show you a short video of what kind of conversations happen during after school Harvest of the Month. I hope you can sense the enthusiasm of the kiddos.
Sorry, let me just reshare and make sure I'm getting the sound on there.
Yeah, no, that's okay. I thought it would be fun to show you instead of trying to describe it myself. Go ahead.
A potato. Okay, everyone say it. A potato. Does this potato have a name? Okay, raise your hand. Is it a red potato? Yes or no?
No.
Is it a gold potato? Yes or no?
No.
Is it a russet potato? No. It is. That's the name of this potato. It's a russet potato. Do you guys know potatoes have names?
No.
Yeah, there's different kinds. There's sweet potatoes, there's red potatoes. So raise your hand and tell me, how do you eat your potatoes at home?
Thank you, Ben. If you could turn on my next slide for me. So that group of kiddos attends the Tower Garden Club, and they got to try air fryer potatoes this week. So that's a recent shot. Most of the kiddos said that they loved the potatoes, and I heard a few kiddos, they decided it was the best potatoes they ever had. That being said, we did have one kiddo out of a group of 12 kiddos who voted that they did not like potatoes. But that's the beauty of it. Kiddos get to try something new. I tell them, be brave, even if you don't like it, and then they get to tell everyone if they liked it, loved it, or maybe next time. This is my last slide here. Go back for me. Sorry. So leading Harvest of the Month in after school settings is rewarding, but definitely comes with a few difficulties. The biggest hurdle is that we don't have kitchens in an after school program. Oftentimes our space is limited to a counter and a nearby sink, which makes preparing taste tests a little bit complicated. But with some basic materials like a knife and a cutting board and some fancy equipment like our new air fryers, we have been able to make it work. And it is going strong and kiddos love it. That being said, I would like to hand it off to Tami Frank, and she's going to talk about Harvest of the Month in the early childhood setting.
Thanks, Anna. So we started working with Farm to Early Childhood last year in 2021 through a pilot program grant through the Association of State Public Health Nutritionists called the Cabbage Grant. We started with 2 early childhood sites thanks to a partnership that they were already working with Nebraska Extension and their knapsack program, which Danya will talk about in a little bit. There's kind of 3 components to the Farm-to-ECE piece of this grant. It was really accessing healthy foods, And we do that through the food tastings, offering nutrition education, and then a chance for the kiddos to get their hands dirty and do some gardening. So it was great to have some partnerships on the gardening side for some that I know are on this call today, with Community Crops and Green School Farms providing some of the plants or seeds that were used in their outdoor gardens. Nebraska Extension down in that bottom left corner there, their Master Gardener program. They had Master Gardeners come on site and help the child cares kind of figure out what they wanted to do with their gardens and interact with the kiddos a little bit. And then outside of our growing season, we were fortunate enough to have Robinette Farms provide microgreens, which the kids loved. And they gave us some instructions of how those sites might be able to grow some of those microgreens indoors when it's not quite garden season. So that was very fun, and thanks to Robinette for that. On the nutrition and healthy food access piece, we used the Department of Education's Harvest of the Month materials, similar to what Anna talked about in the after school setting. Ben, we can go to the next slide. So Anna had developed some kind of Harvest of the Month kits because not everyone has access to kitchens, and that can be true in the early childhood setting as well. So the kits were kind of just totes that we took out for each of the classrooms, because some of our sites had multiple classrooms, and they were preparing Harvest of the Month in their classroom, not like at lunch or something like that. So they each had, like Anna said, the cutting boards, knives, posters, access to all of the Harvest of the Month materials. So in the early childhood setting, they like the coloring pages, whereas, where Anna's working with the older kiddos, they might prefer the trivia cards. Throughout the process, though, each month we kind of took a look at what the produce was for that month, talked with the providers and said, what do you need? How do you want to prepare this? So we added a few things along the way. They thought it was important for the kiddos to be able to wash the produce. We got little brushes that we added. And in the early childhood setting, family style service is important. So just adding tongs so they could serve themselves. But as Anna mentioned as well, we did add blenders in the spring to do smoothies with spinach or kale. Gosh, I don't remember which one, either one. And then steamers to use with some of the potatoes. Another piece that we added was kind of the results. We have just a brief evaluation of what the kiddos thought about the Harvest of the Month. And it's nice because they can add in how they prepared it, if there were any challenges that the teacher faced, or anything they'd like to see changed with the program. So we were able to use that information from last year to kind of guide our efforts this year. And having these kits, teachers responded and said it was really easy to implement Harvest of the Month because the produce showed up at their place and they had everything they needed, all of the nutrition education. And while some of them in the early childhood do use the bean counter, liked it, loved it, a lot of times they just do kind of a heads down, hands up kind of approach as well. So all of this really was made possible thanks to the partnerships that we had already had established with some local farmers as well as Nebraska Extension. So I will hand it off to Danya and she can talk more about their role in early childhood.
Hi, everybody. Danya Behrens. I work with Nebraska Extension's Nutrition Education Program. We have partnered with PHL to offer the Harvest of the Month program last year and now again this year. And we had a relationship with PHL prior to this project, which made it a natural fit for us to kind of make the connection when the cabbage grant became a possibility. And I just wanted to kind of highlight the strengths that Nebraska Extension brings to this partnership. We have we take leadership and involvement in the Nebraska Go Knapsack program, which is a statewide program training childcare providers on implementing the best practices related to healthy eating and physical activity. And because of our deep integration into Go Knapsack, we've got great relationship and access to childcare providers across the state. So we were able to kind of tap into some of those local providers here in the Lincoln area that had created some goals on their action plan that related to Farm-to-ECE type items. So we connected with 2 local childcare settings that had some goals related to gardening and incorporating local produce into their facility, and really created a great relationship with those providers that were already kind of on their way to wanting to get involved in this type of work. So one advantage is that NAPSAC is incorporated into Step Up to Quality, which is Nebraska's quality rating improvement system. So it really motivates providers to want to continue to achieve those best practices. And so we have that great relationship with the state on their quality rating improvement system. And we can really provide some monitoring of those best practices through the Go NAPSAC pre and post self-assessment, which is kind of a neat resource to be able to track just the how much they've improved when it comes to making changes in their childcare facility. All right, I'm going to kick it over to Gary so he can talk about a little bit more that's going on in their camp.
Hey guys, excited to be here. This is a great program, and Green School Farms is my farm. It's out near Raymond, which is north of Lincoln. I've been working with PHL for a number of years now. Just we have this sort of joint vision of being this program that can bring local farms to be suppliers and get the food through PHL into early child care and CLCs like Anna and Tami have talked about. And so my role has just been one to supply some of the food, but also to kind of act as a sort of an informal food hub, because this year, if I'm counting right, we actually have had the ability to get 5 farms involved as suppliers into the harvest of the month. And so each month, as has been mentioned, you know, there's been a vegetable of the month or some item of the month. And so we've been able to reach out to local farms, and this year, including Green School, there's been 5 farms that have participated in that. And a small number of CLCs and early child care at the moment, but you know, it's been a great size. It wasn't too much to bite off. It was a bite-sized kind of pilot that made it manageable. And so now we're really excited to just use the cabbage grants and other resources to kind of expand this. And we're working with Ben and Extension to talk about, can we use Market Maker as a tool to sort of be this online resource where farmers can list what they have available, and sites can see, can submit what they need in terms of quantities and products and when they need them each month. And so, as I said, we've been having this sort of dream for a long time about creating this sort of mini harvest of the month food hub that, you know, can bring together farms and education centers. And PHL is sort of the liaison in the middle here that's coordinating all of this. So it's a super exciting program to have been involved with, and just really excited to see how this is going to grow going forward.
Thanks, Gary. Yeah. Ben, you can go to the next slide. Just some successes and lessons learned along the way, as Gary mentioned. Between the CLCs and the early childhood sites, we served over 600 youth last year with Harvest of the Month tastings. You know, I think it really did increase the provider's knowledge and comfort level with just procuring locally, because sometimes that can feel overwhelming if you don't have that connection already. And I got it wrong and said 4, Gary, so that should say 5 local farmers.
4 or 5, yeah.
That have been exposed to Harvest of the Month as well, and the potential of adding that as a new market. And as Gary mentioned, it's just sparked some conversations around Farm-to-ECE. I know Danya and Extension are very interested in the expansion of that too, outside of of Lincoln. And so that's been exciting. Some lessons learned. Gary mentioned just having kind of a smaller bite-sized piece for both providers and producers of what does this look like? How do we establish this relationship? And then a lot of times we even had some of the sites then that after their tasting that they would say, well, now we want to add this to our menu. Can you connect us back with that farmer? And so we are a little bit the middleman right now, but as Gary mentioned, we'd like to see that grow where it's a bit more scalable and sustainable. The Harvest of the Month materials were really well received when we asked the teachers, you know, what do you need? What was it missing? They said nothing. It was great. Everything was there. And Ben, I can let you go to the next slide. So one of the things kind of going forward, you might have noticed on there though, with it being farm to school based materials, we were kind of missing the summer months. So we just made up our own materials to go along with that. But we'd love to see the expansion of those materials for summer months as well, just because, like I said, whether it's the coloring pages, the trivia cards, the nutrition education that goes along with it, it's really well received. And yeah, we just want to, be able to share what we've learned and learn from everyone else across the state that's working on farm to school, farm to ECE. So thank you.
Great. Thank you all so much. Really appreciate it. That's really, really great information and good insights to your work. We're going to keep moving forward here, and I'm going to introduce Lisa Gideon and Kayla Henricks, who are going to talk about their work in the Burwell Public Schools. Lisa.
Thank you. All right. Thank you, Ben. My name is Lisa Gideon, and I'm a farm to school team member at Burwell Public Schools. And again, just want to thank Ben and everyone at the Farm Conference for inviting us to speak today. It's great to be a part of the conference today and hearing so many neat things that are going on and a lot of resources and information, and then be able to share what we're doing at Burwell Public Schools. So I just wanted to start out by sharing a little bit about our school and where we are. We're located kind of in central Nebraska, home of the Longhorns and home of Nebraska's big rodeo and the Calamus Lake. If you've ever had a chance to come out and enjoy our community and what we have to offer. We have a population of about 1,200 people, and our K through 12 enrollment is 318. We have two buildings, and our cafeteria is located in our high school. So you can go to the next slide, please. So just to give you a little background on kind of where how we began kind of our connections with farm to school. In 2017, we began a local beef program where some local producers began donating beef. People were donating money for processing and storage. And it kind of had stopped at that point. But in 2019, I was part of a health and wellness team as I was at that time contracting with the school from my health department job to provide their school nursing position. And specifically on our nutrition team, we were kind of looking at, why are kids not eating at school? We want kids to enjoy a low-cost meal that's hitting all the food groups. And so we decided to make it a goal to increase locally sourced foods on the school lunch menu, whole foods, more fruits and vegetables. And we came across this USDA Farm to School grant. And so we applied for it and were notified in 2020 that we were awarded the grant. And so, and then along that same timeline, in 2021, we applied for and were awarded or chosen for the Nebraska Farm to School Institute. So you can go to the next slide, please. So kind of with our USDA grant, we had developed kind of a mission statement that we wanted to explore new relationships with local producers so that we could get locally sourced foods in our cafeteria. We wanted to develop farm to school curriculum and hands-on activities for our kids K through 12 through various activities like a student garden, greenhouse, agricultural tours, and have recipe development and taste testing events in our cafeteria. And then kind of our ending goal there was that, our students were going to gain valuable habits and making healthy food choices that in the end would decrease their risks for developing chronic diseases like heart disease, diabetes, cancer. And then we also wanted to encourage our students to come back to Burwell in agricultural roles. And so we want to promote agricultural careers that we think will affect our community going forward. So next slide, please. So our team developed from there once we were notified of the grant from the USDA, and with our administrator, Mr. Max, our ag education department, our school lunch program manager, myself, Kayla Hendricks with Nebraska Extension, and then 2 parent community members who also had some health and wellness backgrounds and also restaurant ownership. And then along the way, we picked up Jordan Rasmussen on our team with the Nebraska Education or Extension educator with the Nebraska Farm-to-School Institute. So that was kind of, where we began. And so you can go next slide, please. So I just wanted to share just a few things that we've been able to accomplish. And it kind of all started with, building up our team. We attended some training through the USDA. We toured Litchfield Public Schools, who has the wonderful Trotters Learning Center, their large greenhouse gardening grounds that they produce a lot of their foods for their Litchfield Public Schools. And we were able to tour and eat lunch with them and have a good conversation. And so we really just started with building our team, having a survey, and then communicating what we were going to be getting to do with our school board, our community, our students' families. And so kind of over the course of the grant, we've been able to achieve a few key activities. And I'll point out a few on here, and then I have some pictures to show you. Right away, we started to develop a foundation for nutrition education for the kids by having Tami Pinkney, one of our team members, go into the classroom and do some curriculum and education and some taste testing with the kids. We did do a student survey, which I'll go over in just a second. And let me see here. So I might have you go to the next slide. So through some grant funds, we were able to use Smeekle and Associates out of Lincoln to help us produce a survey and analyze the results. And we found out that the kids were ready to start making healthy food choices. They were indicating their top choices for food, and they were not, candy, diet sodas, and regular pops, French fries. They were the fresh fruits, the garden salads, and things. And so we found that students were ready to start making healthy choices. We found out that kids are spending quite a bit of money on lunch every day. And so, $6 to $10 for lunch. And one of the main reasons, we want to encourage them to come back to the school lunch program is because some kids will apply or be available to have a low cost to no cost. Or even if they didn't have that, the school lunch is a very economical way to have their meals. So, and then we found out that kids are looking for activities in agriculture, and they were really interested in participating in a greenhouse and going on tours, doing taste testings, doing the school garden and being a part of a culinary club. So I'll have you go to the next slide, please. So one of the other big events, or one of the events we had, was just a taste testing event with our salad bar. We did that on a local beef day where we were grilling hamburgers, and we kind of beefed up our salad bar with some offerings that were not normally on the salad bar. And we learned a couple lessons that day that we didn't even know that was occurring. Was the school was only serving salad bar to our 3rd through 12th grade. And then we were also charging for the salad bar like $2.50. And so over the course of time this fall, the school board voted that there would be no charge for the salad bar. And then we've, starting at the beginning of the year, we started serving the K through 12. And it was amazing to see how little kids are just totally ready for new foods and new tastes and textures. And when you get into that 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th grade age level, they've already formulated their opinions. And so we're super happy to be able to get that back into the younger kids and get this started at a young age, so they will not be willing to taste new foods. So and I'll have you go to the next slide, please. This fall we were, last spring, we actually developed a relationship with some girls, some sisters in our school program, and they have a little company called Farm Girl Markets. Their primary production is pumpkins, but we went ahead and had them grow watermelons and cantaloupes for us. And we were able to utilize some grant funds to help pay for that and serve those. And then our local Lions Club donated peaches. And so we kind of did a fun display on how they come from Colorado to kind of showcase where peaches come from. Next slide, please. We celebrated October's National Farm to School Month by participating in the Nebraska Crunch Off. And then I'm going to go ahead and have you go to the next slide, please. And we also, during the month of October, sent a large group of our FFA students down to the Trotter's Garden Shop and Learning Center. And I'll go next slide, please. And the kids did a tour and harvested food. Next slide, please. And so they worked one whole afternoon harvesting the food. Next slide. Got a few slides of these pictures. They just had a ball harvesting all different kinds of foods. Next slide, please. And then they took them into the Trotter's Learning Center, where they have a really nice processing center, and cleaned and processed all the foods to bring back to the school. Next slide, please. So there they are when they returned to school, all the crates of food that they were able to bring back, and they just had a great experience. And so then we were able to, next slide, please, able to utilize, and sorry, some of my slides didn't quite, they got a little messed up in the translation, but anyway, we were able to utilize some Harvest of the Month and our foods that we harvested from Litchfield to do a taste testing event with some cauliflower. And then we kind of utilized that as an opportunity to communicate to our community and school and parents, families through Facebook of what we were doing. And next slide, please. Oh, might go back one. There we go. And again, another Harvest of the Month event that we had in January was showcasing cabbage that we had gotten from Litchfield. And we did a Runza casserole, which was a big hit with the kids. It was very delicious. And we're looking forward to, increasing our utilization of the Harvest of the Month on all the materials that are available for us. I'll go next slide, please. So we too had some challenges and some opportunities for growth as we went through the grant process, and as we've been in the Institute, just increasing our training and support for our school lunch staff, just making them more comfortable with the products that we're bringing in and how to incorporate those in, kind of the utilization of the commodities they're already getting and the budgets that they have to utilize for food, and trying to make those connections for them, and just making sure we have the right equipment for them and the training to incorporate those local foods. And then of course, procurement, just, we want to continue to develop our relationships. We do have a good relationship with Litchfield. We've made some contacts and toured with Clear Creek Organics. And then again, like our students that we developed a relationship with, our Farm Girl Markets, we're going to utilize some Institute funds to help those girls with some development of their business, to develop a logo and to help them determine some additional crops that they might be able to produce for us. And then I think we're excited. I think we hopefully are going to be able to be a part of the LIFT program, because one of the things we didn't necessarily get done during our grant period was the recipe development. And so I'm looking forward to the LIFT program helping us kind of get to that next level. And then, you know, kind of with everything, just continuing to build our team, working with communicating with our families, our community, and continuing to build our program through some marketing. And so those are kind of some of the things that I feel like we have an opportunity to grow in. Next slide, please. So just some of the next things that we're doing, we did the planning grant can transition into an implementation grant, but you have to apply for it. So we have applied for a USDA implementation grant, and we won't know if we have received that until next summer. And you know, we're excited that we're able to continue our work with the Nebraska Department of Education and the UNL's Extension's Farm to School Institute with the action planning that they've been helping us do and kind of in the meantime. And so, you know, as we work into the next level of what we want to do with our implementation grant, you know, we want to continue to develop what we're doing in the school lunch program, but we're also looking at developing a culinary club and wrote into our grant some funds to make a nice teaching kitchen and a processing kitchen. And then this spring, we're in the process of constructing some elevated gardens, and we had some grant funds that are paying to make a garden shed and some garden tools, and we have some funds available to start building a greenhouse. So we have a lot of things going on, and we're looking forward to continuing our work and developing like a full-scale farm to school program.
Wonderful. Thank you, Lisa, so much. That was really, really great to hear all the great things happening in Burwell. Thank you for sharing everything. I really appreciate it. We've got a few minutes left here. I'm going to just open it up for a question and answer. Let's see here. Take a look. I don't know, Sarah, if you've looked in the chat box, if there's questions already loaded up in there. But if not, if anybody has questions, you can put them in the chat box or unmute to ask questions for anyone on the panel here. I'm going to get everyone connected. Quiet group today. Okay. Let's see from Mariel. Lots of great comments in the chat. If you all haven't looked through the chat, there's some great information in there and feedback from everybody. I did want to mention Jordan Rasmussen is on this call, and she was the coach for Burwell Public Schools. So I want to acknowledge her and thank her for her work. Helping Burwell with their action plans and getting that all moving forward. Tim and Kay ask, how is it that we haven't been doing this all along? He says, it's all very exciting, and just kind of, how haven't we been doing this all along? It seems like this is such a kind of a natural outgrowth of all school education. And I would just add to that, you know, having kind of worked with these 8 schools across the last year and getting to kind of be listening to them as they're developing, like Burwell, you know, just they start out here, and then it's amazing the leaps and bounds they can take within the amount of year. And it just kind of really shows the strengths of those partnerships that they're developing and talking about, and those relationships and how valuable those are. You know, if you were in the last session of the local food coalition building session, kind of a lot of echoing what Courtney Long was talking about in that session about the value of relationships. And sometimes it takes a lot of time to build those relationships properly and really make them fruitful. Other times you can kind of really connect with people and groups and organizations and just accelerate so rapidly. And so, you know, some of the stuff we hear from other schools, like, for example, Southern Public Schools is one of our teams. It just kind of little bit mind-boggling, some of the things that they're doing, farm to school related, everything from multiple greenhouses to production on school grounds that's going into the cafeteria to raising chickens, and students are butchering the chickens and serving them in the cafeteria. I mean, it's just really kind of a comprehensive sort of farm to school effort going on there, and some great opportunities and relationships coming out of there. So it is, I feel like we used to do it, and now we kind of lost it and we're getting back to it. I hope so. So we are right at our time. Does anyone have one last question or comment they'd like to make before we log off here?
I would just add that one of the things I'm excited about that we're working on for Burwell is that we're going to have some of the high school ag classes. We're going to do kind of a train the trainer with the ag instructor and myself teaching this high school students, and then they're going to go into the kindergarten through sixth grade classroom in the upcoming months, like a once a month visit. And we're going to continue our farm to school efforts with the teens teaching the other students. So I'm really excited to see that. And we have some really fun ideas, like we might have the students on the lesson with dairy do ice cream in a bag, or just some fun activities where they might get to grow some things or that type of thing. So I think it'll really help engage students and learn more and get them excited about local products.
Great. Thank you for sharing that, Kayla. That's really wonderful.
Thank you.
Okay, we are at our time here. So I'm going to thank all of our panelists for joining us today and for all the great work that you do out in the schools and the communities. I really appreciate it. I appreciate your time and getting to hear more about what you do. And thank you all for joining us on this session. And this was our last concurrent session of the day. So we're going to send you back to the main room, and we have a closing comments and presentation. So have a great day, everyone. Thank you.